It's been a huge morning at the Upper House inquiry into John Barilaro's controversial posting to the New York role, with the man at the centre of the saga, former Deputy Premier John Barilaro, giving evidence. We're going to bring in political editor Andrew Clennell now. And Andrew, he canvassed applying for the job with lots of colleagues.
He did, and including with the Premier. At no stage, Gab, does the Premier say this might not be a good idea, it'd look bad politically. He hasn't even left the Parliament yet, Dominic Perrottet. He's announced last October he would. In November, he tells Dominic Perrottet he's going for this job. Dominic Perrottet says that's great. Have a listen.
And I had a conversation previously in late November when I thought about this role in a passing comment with the Premier of New South Wales.
And where did this conversation take place?
Look, I just can't recall, but it might have been a phone call, just a phone call. There was many phone calls after I left with Mr Perrottet. He was always checking in on me. He was checking in on me, and on one of those occasions I flagged, as I said, that I'd be interested. He had nothing more to say than go for it. And in one of those conversations you said you raised an interest? Yeah, I just mentioned that, I was thinking about the trade role to the Americas.
Do you recall precisely what you said, or is that the best recollection?
I think that would be the closest I could recall.
And what did he say?
All I remember was like great, or what I think it was just like great, and that was it.
See, what John Barilaro is almost doing there is asking permission of the Premier to go for the job. And can you imagine then the public service who've worked with John Barilaro as Deputy Premier, know he's close to the Premier, and the selection panel with John Barilaro in front of them, would they be minded to let him through? There's a second opportunity here for Dominic Perrottet to kibosh the appointment. That's when he sees John Barilaro in Martin Place.
I ran into Premier Perrottet in Martin Place late January, early February.
Okay, and what happened then?
And that's when I told him I applied.
John Barilaro called this saga. Over the last 6 weeks, it's been a controversy for the New South Wales government. A personal hell.
I applied for a public service job as a private citizen. Nothing excluded me in doing so. I followed the exact same process that was afforded to others. From that moment, I've endured what can only be described as a personal hell, unfair and unjust.
Well, his former Chief of Staff, Mark Connell, gave a statement to the inquiry that said after the 2019 election, just a month after, in April 2019, John Barilaro had said he wanted to set up this New York position and he wanted it. John Barilaro says here he first thought about it after resigning from Parliament, straight after announcing that, but still while a member of Parliament, late last year, that he wanted to apply.
When did you first develop an interest in becoming the Senior Trade and Investment Commissioner in the Americas?
Well, late last year, after I resigned.
You're referring to your resignation as Deputy Premier and as the Minister for Trade, correct?
That is correct.
But prior to your resignation as a member for Monero, is that correct?
Absolutely.
Did he tell anyone else? Yes, as a matter of fact, he says, I told the Treasurer Matt Kean. Everyone would say the second most powerful person in the government, and Matt Kean doesn't object either. I put it to you as viewers that essentially he's trying to cover himself here, John Barilaro, to see there won't be an internal storm about the appointment because Barilaro and Kean are old enemies.
I mentioned with Minister Kean that I was considering it, applying for the role.
And what did he say back?
I think he just said he was supportive. I actually don't know. I can't recall the exact word. He was supportive.
And your predominant purpose in testing the proposition with Minister Kean was in order to identify whether or not the government would fear a political controversy?
Not necessarily. Look, there's no question that, I over the years have forged friendships with former colleagues, and like most people would do, they would reach out to some of those colleagues and to get some level of counsel. But
were you testing whether Mr Kean would push back on your appointment?
Not necessarily. I know people think that Minister Kean and I might have been, foes, not friends. But if you go back to my final speech, I did actually talk about our friendship.